Is the US Navy quietly admitting defeat in the face of Mojtaba's expanding missile arsenal, as America's long-range ship-launched firepower starts to hollow out? Are Trump's naval forces running dangerously low on their prized Tomahawk cruise missiles, just as planners fear they may have to fight Iran again in a high-intensity campaign? Iran is preparing fresh missile barrages for a renewed war at the very moment 2,080 Tomahawk launch cells are set to vanish from the US Navy as submarines and cruisers retire. The US Navy itself admits it cannot afford the costs and munitions burn rate of yet another full-scale war in the Gulf. How will it sustain a grinding missile fight with Iran? The US Navy is facing a looming shortfall in Tomahawk cruise missile capacity, just as planners fear a renewed large-scale war with Iran could demand heavy opening strikes. This gap arises because the Navy's Ohio-class guided missile submarines, SSGNs, are nearing retirement after more than 4 decades of service. Each Ohio-class SSGN can carry up to 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, giving the United States a massive, covert undersea strike magazine for the opening phases of a conflict. These submarines can unleash large, precision missile salvos from underwater, hitting key enemy targets early while remaining hidden from detection. The US Navy currently operates 4 such Ohio-class guided missile submarines, which together represent a major share of America's long-range conventional firepower at sea. However, all 4 SSGNs are scheduled to retire in the coming years, mainly due to aging hulls and growing maintenance burdens that make continued operation difficult. Once removed from service, their retirement would strip 616 Tomahawk missiles from the US Undersea Strike Force on paper. Combined with the planned retirement of its Ticonderoga-class cruisers, the US Navy is on track to lose launch capacity for roughly 2,080 Tomahawk cruise missiles. This combined loss would create a pronounced drop in America's long-range, sea-based conventional missile firepower until replacements fully arrive. The Ohio-class SSGNs are widely regarded as the most powerful conventional strike submarines ever fielded, given their large missile load and flexibility. They can stay hidden underwater for long periods while delivering repeated, large-scale Tomahawk salvos against land targets. In addition to strike missions, these submarines also support covert Navy SEAL and special operations, using their size and payload to carry commandos and equipment. The submarines were originally built in the 1980s as ballistic missile boats and later converted, and they are now over 40 years old. Aging nuclear reactors and rising maintenance needs are the main drivers behind the decision to remove them from service. New Virginia-class Block V attack submarines, equipped with an added missile compartment, are expected to partially take over the SSGN's role. However, each Virginia Block V can hold only about 40 Tomahawk missiles, far fewer than a single Ohio-class SSGN. In practical terms, the Navy would need roughly 3 Virginia-class boats to match the Tomahawk load of 1 Ohio-class guided missile submarine. US officials and analysts warn this mismatch could leave a notable strike capability gap that persists well into the 2030s. To soften the transition, the Navy is considering extending the service lives of at least 2 of the SSGNs, USS Ohio and USS Michigan, until sufficient replacements are available. At the same time, Navy leaders have acknowledged that the costs of sustaining high-tempo operations for a prolonged Iran war would be difficult to bear under current budgets. Amid talk that fighting with Iran could resume, senior US Navy leaders are now openly admitting they cannot sustain current costs without painful cuts elsewhere. The service's operations chief says the 2026 budget was written before Epic Fury was on the table, meaning this entire Iran campaign is being funded off a plan that never anticipated a major Gulf War. Admiral Daryl Caudle describes the Navy as burning bright in the Middle East, but warns that every extra patrol and strike comes at a steep operational cost that is now starting to bite. He says the fleet is rapidly depleting fuel budgets, maintenance money, stocks of smart weapons, and the finite flight hours left on jets and helicopters scheduled for overhaul. Caudle warns that without extra cash from Congress, the Navy will have to start slashing training cycles and routine operations by July, gutting readiness to keep the Iran front man. His warning comes in the wake of US-Israeli operations that began on February 28th, a campaign that suddenly turned the Gulf into a 24/7 theater for carriers, destroyers, and patrol aircraft. That high-intensity phase lasted 39 days before an April 8th ceasefire understanding, but the Navy's bills, and the strain on crews and hardware, have only kept mounting since. Caudle says, and I quote, "The fiscal 2026 budget didn't bake in Operation Epic Fury. You see a large Navy force in the Middle East. So we're burning bright. But it does come at cost, and it comes at operational costs. To have the funds necessary to continue the war effort, which is quickly racking up fuel costs, operating hours, maintenance dollars, and munitions. I do fear that I'll have to start making decisions in the July time frame. My record recruiting is going to be thwarted without additional funding to PCS to those individuals from boot camp and to pay enlistment and re-enlistment bonuses." Unquote. Months of non-stop missions around Iran have heavily drained maintenance accounts, forcing commanders to delay repairs and push aging hulls harder than planners ever intended. Caudle says the Navy may even have to pause permanent change of station moves for 12,000 to 15,000 sailors, freezing careers and family plans to save money for operations. He also warns that enlistment and re-enlistment bonuses could be delayed or reduced, undercutting recruitment just when the service needs fresh crews most. Extended deployments off Iran have already created logistics problems, with some ships reporting shortages of fresh food, spare parts, and other basics as rotations drag on. Reports from the fleet suggest morale is suffering and mechanical faults are rising, as overworked sailors and stretched maintenance cycles collide under punishing schedules. According to the New York Times, U.S. intelligence reports quietly contradicted Donald Trump's public claims of a decisive victory over Iran. Secret American assessments reportedly revealed that Iran's missile infrastructure remained largely intact despite the intense military campaign. Intelligence findings showed Iran regained operational access to most of its missile bases and underground military facilities. The New York Times reported that Iran restored access to 30 out of 33 missile sites positioned along the Strait of Hormuz. Those missile batteries continue to pose a serious threat to U.S. warships and global oil tankers crossing the critical waterway. American intelligence reportedly assessed that Iran still retained nearly 70% of its mobile missile launchers and stockpiles nationwide. The surviving arsenal reportedly included ballistic missiles capable of regional strikes, along with shorter-range cruise missiles targeting land and sea assets. Analysts further concluded that Iran regained access to nearly 90% of its underground missile storage network after the strikes. The findings directly challenged public claims by Trump and Pete Hegseth that Iran's military capabilities had been decimated. While Trump insisted Iran's missile network had been reduced to a scatter, intelligence assessments painted a far more resilient picture. The reports also exposed a growing dilemma for Washington, with U.S. munition stockpiles shrinking while Iran's capabilities remained substantial. Officials reportedly warned that if the ceasefire collapses, renewed strikes could rapidly drain already strained American missile inventories. Military commanders earlier chose to seal bunker entrances instead of destroying them fully, aiming to conserve scarce bunker-busting weapons. Experts warned that rebuilding America's stockpile of Tomahawks, Patriots, and advanced cruise missiles could take several years.